Hello and welcome. Good evening. You're joining us here on our rolling coverage on India Today of the war that's playing out right now in the Middle East. There's been an unprecedented escalation in the last 24 hours, and over the next 30 minutes, we're going to be decoding for you exactly what's happened. How has Iran hit back at so many countries in one go? What's going to happen in the next 24 or even 48 hours? We'll decode all of that for you. We'll begin with the top 10 headlines. The US has confirmed that 3 F-15 fighter jets crashed in Kuwait. Central Command says they were mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses and were a victim of friendly fire.
1 minute.
Iran's ambassador to the IAEA says that the United States and Israel attacked Iranian nuclear facilities, specifically naming the Natanz facility as the target. The IAEA, which is a global nuclear watchdog, says there's no sign that Iran's nuke sites were hit. Iran expands war theatre, attacks multiple bases of Israel allies, including UK and France. Israel pounds Hezbollah across Lebanon. IDF launches an additional wave of strikes in Lebanon. Among the targets struck are Hezbollah weapon storage facilities and additional infrastructure in several areas in Lebanon. A day after killing of Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei pitched West Asia into deepening uncertainty. Iran has retaliated with dozens of missile strikes in Israeli capital, Jerusalem. Prime Minister Modi chaired a crucial meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security to review the escalating situation in West Asia with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, Home Minister Amit Shah, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. The NSA CDS were also present. As the conflict in West Asia rages on, European allies of the United States have come forward to back Trump. France, Germany, UK, in a joint statement, said they're ready to work with America and partners to help stop Iran's retaliatory attacks. Protests rage in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir over US-Israel strikes on Iran. Tear gas and shots were fired amid smoke plumes as demonstrators clashed with security forces, echoing deadly unrest, particularly at US consulates. Aviation Ministry is monitoring the West Asia war. The Aviation Ministry says helplines and portals have been opened for flyers. Helpline of Indian Embassy is also shared after Air India and Akasa suspends flights to West Asia. Government sources say the centers cautioned states to keep an eye on Iran protests, ensure it does not turn into a law and order issue. The police has also been asked to preempt any inflammatory sermons in religious gatherings. All right, you're joining us here on our special broadcast on India Today. We've been getting you every single update that's been coming in on the war that's playing out in the Middle East. And I've got India's #1 war reporter, Gaurav Sawant, who's reported on a number such similar conflicts. Sandeep Unithan to break down for you exactly what the strategy is of both sides. But Gaurav, I'll begin with you on what's played out in the last 24 hours alone in this conflict. What do you make of it?
So this war is escalating, and it's escalating dangerously. It's expanded to newer areas. Initially, these were just military targets that were being acquired. Iran had warned it will target GCC countries, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. Not only has it done that, even when the debris went down in some areas during interception, there has been some damage to civilian areas, which is a cause for grave concern. The fact that US aircraft have been down, the fact that this war is escalating in newer directions, hypersonic missiles are now being used, it just goes on to indicate that this war is expanding into very dangerous territory.
And what do you think, Sandeep? You know, in the last 24 hours, there's been an escalation on the part of Iran that many wouldn't have seen coming, essentially. You know, what's played out, the fact that they've targeted so many countries.
Right, absolutely. You know, Akshita, the US and Israeli strategy was very clear. It basically has three pillars. It was decapitation and regime change. That was the first pillar. The second one is, of course, to strike at Iran's command and control centers, to paralyze its ability to launch missiles, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. And of course, the third is military degradation, to hit at Iran's conventional military capabilities. They've been doing all of this for the last 3 days without much success. Despite the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran has continued to fire missiles. It has expanded the arc of conflict from Cyprus all the way up to Oman. That's over 2,000 kilometers. It's targeted something like 8 countries in 48 hours. No country in the history of warfare has targeted so many countries in one series of drone, missile and ballistic missile strikes. And this is Iran continuing to fight despite losing the leadership. This is a very, very important moment in this war. It possibly points to some kind of miscalculation on the part of the US and Israel, that they thought that leadership change could be brought out from the air. They could carry out decapitation strikes, paralyzing Iran's ability to launch missiles. But Iran, has shown a certain amount of resilience, continuity, and it has expanded the conflict, and they've carried it into the Gulf monarchies, the 6 GCC countries, the Gulf Cooperative Council countries, Cyprus, Israel and Jordan as well, Akshita.
You know, the question that will be asked, therefore, is whether Iran was, in a sense, underestimated. We'll ask that in the course of this coverage, but I want to cut across to big breaking news coming in. One of the most significant images that came in today was of a US fighter jet crashing in Kuwait. And now the first statement has come in from America on this. US has confirmed that the F-15 was down in friendly fire. And it wasn't just one F-15. The statement that's coming from America has confirmed that three US F-15 Eagles flying in support of Operation Epic Fury, which is what America is calling this operation, went down over Kuwait due to an apparent friendly fire incident. The statement says during active combat that included attacks from Iranian aircraft, ballistic missiles and drones, the US Air Force fighter jets were mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses. All 6 aircrew ejected safely, have been safely recovered and are in a stable condition. How do you read this, Sandeep? Unbelievable footage, by the way, of that F-15 just collapsing suddenly. And there were so many questions about what led to this. What do you make of the statement that comes in from America that says, look, this happened, friendly fire?
Well, this is unprecedented. I don't think there's ever been a case in the 21st century, at least, of 3 frontline fighter aircraft like this going down due to enemy, friendly fire. Now, I'll just explain what friendly fire means. It is when your own side fires at you, mistaking you to be the enemy. And in this case, it appears to have been the Patriot missile batteries on the ground which fired at these 3 aircraft that were coming in. The US Air Force aircraft, that is the F-15 Strike Eagle. It is the most, it is the best fighter bomber that the US has in its fleet. It is the equivalent of our Su-30 MKI. It carries something like 10 tons of ordnance, missiles, and bombs. It's been used extensively during Operation Epic Fury. Now, how did they not coordinate their flights
and 3 of them?
The 3 aircraft going down? It's unprecedented. This kind of a thing, it happened. The last time these kind of incidents happened were during the Second World War or in the pre-digital era, right? But now you have the kind of sophisticated identification frame for IFF systems that are, on aircraft, on the ground, on the missile systems as well, so that you don't, make this mistake. Now, we have to, make that point about the Indian Air Force has had one such very tragic incident during the Balakot airstrikes in 2019, where an IAF missile unit fired mistakenly at an Mi-17, an IAF Mi-17, causing loss of life over here. But to shoot down 3 fighter jets, 3 F-15 Strike Eagles, it is unprecedented in the 21st century.
The wording of the statement, Gaurav, I find that so surprising that US says, look, this is a friendly fire incident. There's no talk of an inquiry, there's no talk of what's happened. The pilots, fortunately, are safe, by the way. All 6 ejected safely. They've been recovered as well. But to have 3 jets down, and it takes me back to how Trump constantly spoke about jets down post-Operation Sindoor.
So, look, there are 2 things. A fighter jet like an F-15 has an IFF system, identify friend or foe, so that there isn't a blue on blue. And this is a blue on blue in military parlance, which is your own missiles take down your own aircraft, because your missiles are made in such a way that they'll only take down an enemy aircraft. The identify friend or foe system will prevent own missile taking down own aircraft unless IFF was shut down, and that does not explain why would IFF system be shut down mistakenly perhaps in 1 aircraft. Can it be mistakenly shut down in 3 aircraft? You know, we'll have to wait. Usually there's a military inquiry, a court of inquiry reveals the real cause, and there are consequences to be paid, because this is the taxpayers' money, even if it's the American taxpayers' money that's going down the tube here. And a blue on blue without war, you know, had it happened in enemy fire, you can understand this.
Yeah.
This will, of course, be spun around. And since you mentioned Op Sindoor, it remains to be seen whether these numbers go up from 3 to 13 in Donald Trump's parlance. But we will still have to wait and watch.
A good one there, Gaurav. But as we track those updates, let's get you more news breaks that are coming in. Constant updates that are trickling in right now. What's playing out in the West Asia war? Following Hezbollah's overnight strike on Israel, the Lebanese Prime Minister has made it clear that there will be a crackdown on Hezbollah's military activities, asking them to only work in politics. Lebanon's government says it considers Hezbollah's military activities as illegal acts, says the group should hand over its weapons. But it's highly unlikely, Gaurav, that this will have any impact whatsoever. You know, for Israel, they're already facing these strikes from Iran, from Hezbollah. There have been some reports also of Houthis.
You know, in a lighter vein, would the government in Lebanon have the permission of Hezbollah to say what they're saying? Because Hezbollah is the one that has the weapons and wears the pants, so to say. But clearly, what Hezbollah has done, it had to do, and it said so in a statement, because their supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had been neutralized, so they targeted Israel, the northern part of the country. Israel then issued an order saying 50 villages need to be vacated. And imagine, during the holy month of Ramzan, instead of Sehri, the early morning or the pre-dawn meals before people can start fasting, thousands of people were leaving Beirut and other areas for Israel because they knew Israeli airstrikes would happen. So this is a very dangerous situation. Hezbollah had been warned they can continue their political activities, but not military activities. It remains to be seen whether this is just verbal or will there be action on ground.
You know, we've been talking about this for the last 2 days, about how the theatre of war is expanding. More countries are being dragged into this conflict one way or another. We'll just break that down for you. Let's put out on our screens right now what's happened in the last 24 hours as far as the theatre of war is concerned. We've seen Iran now firing strikes at almost every US asset that they can reach out to. And Sandeep, as we'll break that down, we'll put out those, and there you have it. All of the conflict zones right now, what's playing out. A lot of this has actually expanded in the last 24 hours alone. A lot of these countries have gotten involved in the last 24 hours alone.
Absolutely, and this is all because Iran has expanded the zone of conflict, over the last 24 hours. And if the US and Israel thought that they could confine the fighting to Iran and degrade their ability to launch ballistic missiles, Iran has clearly disproved them by expanding that range of conflict by targeting countries as far as Cyprus right there to the west and Oman to the east. So that's a massive arc of countries that they have targeted. They primarily targeted the US military bases, as they are saying, that because they host US military bases, all of the countries, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman and the UAE, they all host US military bases, and that's why Iran says that they're targeting them. But there's another aspect to that as well, and that is the targeting of commercial establishments in the GCC countries, in the Arab monarchies, high visibility symbols of economic progress, like the Jebel,
Dubai.
The Bar Dubai, in Dubai they've targeted the Palm Jumeirah, they've targeted
Burj
Burj Al Khalifa, those hotels, high visibility thing, and the airport, one of the busiest airports in the world.
Or was that debris?
So debris is
Because
what
of
we have been told, that
interceptions.
they essentially targeted military installations, the Patriot missile defense shield. So all these countries, they invested very heavily in American missile defense shields because America had taken the responsibility to look after them. If you'd recall, during the 12-day war, when Israel struck Qatar, the Al Udeid air base, that's the time these countries started panicking, saying America is not protecting us. And that's why Saudi Arabia had that agreement with Pakistan. Not that it's worth the paper it's written on, but be that as it may, UAE now must be thinking that have they invested enough, or do they need to invest more in the Patriot or THAAD or other such systems? Perhaps India's Akasha always does much better, as we've seen during Operation Sindoor. Our surface-to-air missile defense shield, the Sudarshan Chakra, the S-400. Not that I'm, marketing any of those weapons, but we're just saying that in operations, they've done extremely well. It's the Strait of Hormuz being targeted. Even though Iran says it's not an official blockade, it's just a temporary restriction on movement of some ships. But most ships are dropping anchor. They refuse to go because insurance rates have gone through the roof, and that's a cause for grave concern.
Right.
Now, I also want to talk about the response that's coming from these Muslim nations. So we'll get to that in a bit. Just because we're speaking about what's been happening in the last 24 hours, I'll tell you about the kind of images also that we've been getting in of US targets in the Gulf. Missile sirens going off across Israel. This conflict has now spread. If anyone thought this war is ending in the next 24 hours, that with the killing of Khamenei, it comes to an end, or it will kind of dissipate, not at all happening. The conflict has spread. It's only escalating. Here's all that's happened.
A deadly wave of attacks is sweeping across the Gulf. Since the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, in Israeli airstrikes, Tehran has launched strikes on 10 countries in the Middle East. The revenge campaign has hit many American targets. The US embassy in Kuwait was struck by Iranian drones, sending plumes of smoke into the sky. Several US fighter jets went down in Kuwait, but the reason for the crash is unknown.
Police, yes, 1 minute, 1 minute.
Iran struck a US naval base in Bahrain, marking a dangerous escalation in the Gulf. Drones were sighted over Dubai and Doha. Even as massive explosions rocked Tehran and missile sirens blared in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, sending civilians rushing for cover. In Saudi Arabia, Iranian drones struck the Aramco Ras Tanura refinery, forcing the facility to temporarily shut down. Meanwhile, Hezbollah launched attacks on Israel in retaliation to Ayatollah Khamenei's killing. Israel responded with precision airstrikes on Beirut and southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, the nuclear watchdog IAEA warns of severe consequences if tensions escalate. Iran claims that Israel has attacked its nuclear facilities. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, drones and missiles have lit up the skies. The Middle East is now the middle of an all-out war. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's now get you a sense of how the two countries, primarily here, Israel versus Iran, is shaping up. Two very different strategies, but there will be many questions about how Iran's strategy is also held up. We're calling it the decapitation strategy versus the managed continuity model. Sandeep, you want to run us through what really we mean by those two?
Well, this decapitation strategy that Israel and the United States have put into play over the last 3 days essentially targets the leadership, as it suggests. They plan to kill all the leaders and thereby, bringing in chaos and causing a collapse of the regime. Now, this has been used very successfully by Israel to target terror outfits. Like, Hezbollah has been decapitated several times.
And those precision strikes.
Precision strikes. It calls for a confluence of many things like, human intelligence, technical intelligence, AI, platforms have been used as well. AI engines have been used to do their targeting. So Israel is very good at decapitation, targeting, these designated leaders. That has been their model. But Iran's model has been to ensure there are designated successors for all the people who have been targeted. And this is something that they have prepared for over the last couple of weeks. They have identified, it is said that Ayatollah Khamenei had asked his leaders to identify something like 3 or 4 layers down to the provincial level to ensure that there would be no disruption in case 1 or 2 leaders were assassinated. And this is Iran at its, this designated successor model of them seems to have worked, because if you see the missile attacks, the drone attacks have actually increased after Ayatollah Khamenei's death. And if Israel and the US thought that they could disrupt the Iranian command and control structure by carrying out these assassinations, there's something else that seems to have happened, and that is Iran has gone into this kind of autonomous mode where all their regional commanders are firing off their missiles as per their orders.
And, top political military leaders, yes, Gaurav, everyone thought with the killing of Khamenei it ends there. But Israel's strategy also means that they're going ahead and targeting the other top command leadership, almost as if, okay, you have a number 2, we'll go after them too. That hasn't helped, though. Iran seems to have a backup to a backup.
When war games happen, in war games, there's a concept of known, known, unknown, unknown, and then what you don't know at all. And this is where they seem to have goofed up. If it is a goof up, it's just 3 days. Yes, Israel and America. It's just 3 or 4 days into this conflict just as yet. It's early days. But if they thought that killing Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the country will fold up, that's not how civilization states work. That's not how states which have systems in place. A monarchy may collapse. Any other country which is based on just one leader, that country may collapse. But Iran has systems in place, and systems that have been developed over years, systems that have war-gamed the decapitation strategy. So they put, there's a plan B, there's a plan C, there's a plan D. There are redundancies that are built into this system. So far, all of them seem to be working down to at least 4 to 5 levels. And it's a huge country. It's not a tiny country. Iran is a very vast country. It has mountainous terrain. It has the sea. And it has a lot of places where they can hide, they can run, they can regroup. They have money, they have oil. They may be financially not well off right now. So financially, they are at their weakest. Militarily, they are not at their weakest. Politically, they are not at their weakest.
No,
and we haven't seen people come out on the streets.
Exactly that, Gaurav. A large part of the strategy for Israel seemed to be that, look, we'll take the first step, and then the people of Iran will take the next few steps. That will trigger some sort of rebellion, and that will lead to the regime change. So they wanted to disrupt planning, coordination, morale. None of that has actually happened, or is that something that, could happen?
The US is certainly banking on that. If you see the public appeals that President Donald Trump has been making to the Iranian people right from January to say that rise up in revolt, and they're hoping, the United States is hoping for a 1979 moment in Iran. Now, 1979 being the time when the Shah of Iran, he couldn't get his army to obey him.
So why is it not happening? Is it that, does that then translate to people like the current regime? Is that what it means?
Or they don't have the kind of power, or they don't have the power.
So, Iran earlier had an army. Now it has multiple forces that are loyal to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the religious belief. So they're not loyal to the country. Quite like China. China has People's Liberation Army that owes its loyalty to the Communist Party of China and not to the nation of China. Our army is loyal to the constitution. But in Iran, there are forces that are loyal to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They get their money out of them and they're loyal to them. So they have their stakes in governance. That's point 1. Point 2, it's such a huge country. Everyone doesn't have the same mindset. So people may or may not come out on streets. We still do not know. It's not like a Sri Lanka or a Bangladesh or a Nepal, like a Gen Z will happen and it can be triggered from outside. It's clearly not happening. If, at least not as yet. Yesterday, there was, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, their systems, there was a cyber attack. Iranian television had Benjamin Netanyahu's speech asking people to come out on the streets and protest.
But nothing's happened. 24 hours on, we haven't seen any sort of uprising, and we've got our ears to the ground. So far, while you saw images, and there is a large part of it that's focused on creating that narrative. So while you had images right after Khamenei's death of people, thousands of mourners on the streets, you haven't seen any sort of uprising against the regime, or at least those images haven't come out. Let me also cut across to breaking news that's coming in. Reports suggesting that the Iraqi Prime Minister has instructed security forces to counter any action that would undermine their security and stability. Now, what exactly does this mean? Does this mean we're seeing more and more countries getting roped into this particular war? Iraq, many would say, has already been in the heart of this particular conflict. So, Sandeep, with this particular statement that's come in from the Iraqi PM, do you see that theatre of war further expanding, that the strikes, counters, all of that will continue?
Well, Akshita, that statement appears to be directed at the Shia militias inside of Iraq. Now, the fact is that Iran has the so-called axis of resistance, which is the Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and of course the Shia militias inside of Iraq. They're very active there, and they've been targeting US interests in Iraq. So this is the Iraqi administration, which is pro-American, warning these Shia militias that there would be action against them. This is, of course, based on the fact that Iran would actually have activated this so-called axis of resistance, to build pressure on the US and Iran to dial down on the air.
Gaurav, you want to make a point?
So, right now what is happening in this conflict is it's expanding in a very, very big way and in multiple directions. And right now, Iraq also wouldn't want an uprising within their country. Again, the population, 51% Shia, 49% Sunni, they wouldn't want an uprising within their country. So they're just saying, hold your horses, let there be no untoward incident, no law and order breakdown, no change of governance just as yet. Because this war threatens to expand in more dangerous ways than we know in times to come.
Let's go across to the next news break that's coming in. Russian President Vladimir Putin speaking to UAE's president. The Russian president has discussed the current situation that's playing out in the Middle East with UAE. Putin, remember, is one of those leaders who's condemned US and Israel's action against Iran, has also condemned the killing of Khamenei. But what exactly does this mean? I'm curious to know at this point, Sandeep and Gaurav, how the Middle East and Gulf countries are reacting. Are they on Iran's side in the sense, are they condemning the strike that took place, or are they condemning Iran for these counterattacks that are taking place?
So, if I may, all these countries were against America and Israel attacking Iran. They pleaded with America, don't attack. Oman, their foreign minister, went to the extent of saying, give us just another 24 hours. Let us find a solution. All these countries said, we'll attempt if you want a change of regime, let's attempt that through dialogue. And we'll try and deliver. And yet they went into an attack because all of them knew, sensible enough to know that there will be consequences where economies will bleed, people will bleed, turmoil in the entire region. They were trying to avoid it. Israel and America went into this conflict. Now everyone is suffering. Russia is very close, incidentally, both to Saudi Arabia and to the United Arab Emirates. Remember, even that Russia-Ukraine conflict, for negotiations, they would come to the region. They would, and they're really thick. They're really thick together. So can a solution be found? Can Russia do something? Clearly, as of now, the offensive stage will stay. But beyond the offensive stage, when they're dialing down tensions, then this becomes important.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Sandeep, all of these countries that have been seeing these counter strikes by Iran, largely US bases that are being targeted, none of them have really come out to condemn either side very publicly. No hard-hitting statements. Why is
none.
that?
They're in the line of fire, actually. You have to give it to them. Their cities are being attacked. The bases may be there. They have reasons to give those bases to the United States. But it's now their citizens that are in the firing line, and they would be deeply concerned. Look, Israel has some of the most heavily defended spaces on Earth, right? They have the kind of almost impregnable missile defenses. The United States is halfway across the world. There's no way anyone can target them, right? It is the Gulf Cooperative Council, the 6 Arab monarchies in the region, and plus Jordan and, the other countries there, which have to bear the brunt of Iran's offensive. So this is something that they saw coming. And as Gaurav was saying, they were worried about this, the fact that Iran could retaliate, could expand that, arc of conflict, drag them into this thing. And that is exactly what seems to have happened. Look, there's no letting up into this.
This region is actually technically seen as an oasis of peace. Dubai, you either go there
It's
for
unheard
business.
of. Yeah, it's unheard of to see something like this.
Or you go there for a holiday.
Yeah.
You go there to shop. You go there to enjoy. You don't go there to see bombs and missiles or rockets being intercepted.
Yeah.
So that impacts them adversely. That impacts economy of this area adversely. And they all said, we'll intervene. Let's talk. Let's try and sort it out. Their other fear, the GCC countries, the foreign ministers met, emergency meeting, and post this emergency meeting, they've actually told Iran, stop, don't target us, or we will have the reason to target you, and let's not escalate. The Saudi foreign minister summoned the Iranian ambassador and told him that you're attacking a brother Islamic country. You shouldn't be attacking a brother Islamic country when we haven't attacked you. So this is where Iran, despite getting sympathy from these countries, actually escalated and could well then be making them an enemy.
Okay, so then in which case we could see Iran completely alienated as well. Let's talk also about the US military campaign. Remember, Trump has referred to it as Operation Epic Fury, and it continues with strikes on Iranian targets. There have been more images that have come in, released by the US military, showing Tomahawk cruise missiles being launched, B-2 bombers, a term we're all very familiar with right now, flying long-range missions. The message is clear from America that no enemy will be spared. This isn't ending anytime now. US and Israel are continuing the bombardment of Iran.
Nicknamed the Beast, Ghost of the Skies, the B-2 Spirit strategic bomber capable of penetrating enemy airspace undetected to deliver massive, precise or nuclear payloads has been used by the US in its war against Iran. Pentagon confirmed that B-2 stealth bombers struck Iran's reinforced ballistic missile facilities. Armed with 907 kilograms of bombs, B-2 bombers struck Iran's hardened ballistic missile facilities. The precision-guided Tomahawk cruise missile struck targets from 1,600 kilometers away, even in heavily defended airspace. US Operation Epic Fury has struck more than 2,000 sites across Iran in the last 48 hours. Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and dozens of senior regime officials were eliminated in the strikes. The barrage featured B-2 stealth bombers, F-22, and F-16 fighter jets, A-10 attack aircraft, EA-18G electronic warfare planes, and an array of airborne early warning and communications platforms. Missile defense systems, including Patriot interceptors and THAAD anti-ballistic missile defenses, were deployed as part of the operation. USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, is also in the fight with US forces supporting Operation Epic Fury, launching aircraft from eastern Mediterranean Sea. US forces are taking bold action to eliminate imminent threats posed by the Iranian regime, even as strikes continue. This video shows the impact of US strikes on Iran, which the US described as a large-scale strike to cut off the head of the snake. US forces have carried out over 900 strikes in the last 12 hours, while Israeli forces launched roughly 1,200 strikes in 24 hours, exceeding the pace of last year's 12-day Israel-Iran war. The United States has unleashed an array of weaponry against Iranian targets, including Tomahawk cruise missiles, stealth fighters, and for the first time in combat, low-cost one-way attack drones modeled after Iranian designs, showing its might to the world. Bureau Report, India Today.
And there's big breaking news that's coming in. Sources confirming to us that a US-flagged tanker, Stena Imperative, has been hit by 2 projectiles while anchored in the Bahrain port. The fire has reportedly been put out. The crew have been evacuated from that vessel safely, but there have been images coming in from Bahrain that shows the UL naval base being hit badly. And now the confirmation coming in right now that a US-flagged tanker has also been hit. This was largely projectile that hit this particular tanker while it was anchored in the Bahrain port. Sandeep, I'll bring you in on this. You know, those images were very, very telling of the kind of damage inflicted in Bahrain. Now, information trickling in on the level of or extent of damage that's actually happened.
Akshita, Bahrain happens to be the headquarters of the US 5th Fleet. It's headquartered there, and it doesn't have aircraft carriers. It has a couple of replenishment ships. It has warships over there, posted there. But that is, literally one of those places that Iran has threatened to strike. It has done so in the last 3 days, and it's quite possible that that tanker was hit by accident, but it is part of the widening of conflict. You can see the way Iran has been, stepping up its attacks all across West Asia, attacking all the air, US air and sea bases over there, sending out a very strong message that whatever strategy that the US and Israel had followed against Iran seems to have, been grossly miscalculated, it would seem, in the last couple of
But
days.
that's the other question that comes up, Gaurav. Soon after the strike on Iran, it was a given that US bases would be the target. And yet you see in this particular case, why is it that a missile from Iran wasn't intercepted?
So 2 aspects here. One, a missile interception or an incoming projectile interception, a rocket, a missile, a drone, an incoming fighter jet, 96% success, 97% success, it's considered outstanding. So 100% success, not possible. That's point 1. Point 2, sometimes you even wonder if the projectile costs about a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000. Do you send in a projectile that costs a couple of maybe $1 million, $500,000? Do you send that in? Is it cost effective? What is it that it's going to damage? If it's going to just fall in a field, then you let it fall in a field, because the strike may be symbolic, it doesn't hurt you. But here, the strike is very big. It may not have sunk the ship, it will sink your pocket. If an oil tanker is hit, which means insurance rates will go through the roof, which means insurance companies will not let oil tankers be in this area. And if Strait of Hormuz, oil and gas, that supply is choked, then your pocket, my pocket, India is impacted, China is impacted,
Most
South
of the world.
Korea, Japan, all the entire southern South Asia and Southeast Asia, they are very badly impacted. As you pointed out, half the world is impacted. Saudi Arabia is impacted. There'll be so much pressure on US and Israel. Stop, stop, stop. That's exactly what Iran is doing right now.
Okay, more big breaking news that's coming in. Sandeep was pointing out that in the last 24 hours, we've also seen Iran going after Cyprus. As a result of that, the British base has been evacuated in Cyprus. This after 2 unmanned drones were seen headed towards UK's airbase in Cyprus. That was intercepted. Cyprus government did confirm that, and now it looks like, Sandeep, UK said, we're not taking any chances. The entire base going to be evacuated.
This is a surprise, and Iran in the last couple of hours has attacked the British base on Akrotiri in Cyprus. That's a very key base over there, which Britain retained. That's one of those enclaves that Britain retained after Cyprus was granted independence in 1960. Now, Cyprus is an island. It's a little bigger than the Indian state of Sikkim. It's just south of Turkey. It's a very strategically positioned territory over there, and that's the reason that UK has retained those bases there. Akrotiri Air Base was being used by the United States as well as part of this operation Epic Fury, and that is the reason that Iran has targeted them. But here, Akshita, it is over 1,800 kilometers away from Iranian territory. That is how far they have, launched those drones. They've managed to go all the way. It is literally at the westernmost edge of Iran's capabilities, its weapon capabilities.
Did they not see that coming, though? Was Cyprus never considered to be a target, Gaurav? You had a statement earlier that came in from Trump also, where essentially he called out the UK Prime Minister.
So this is strange because just recently, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Merz, they've said that they're coming in to assist in these operations. Given what's happened, USS, the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle is actually en route the Mediterranean Sea even as we speak. But American President Donald Trump is extremely unhappy with Keir Starmer, saying that you didn't permit me the Diego Garcia Air Base. It's a very crucial base in the Indian Ocean, and Trump wanted the Diego Garcia base to launch operations into Iran. Keir Starmer that time said no. Trump says you're not letting me do that because you're scared of the Muslim population in your country. So it's a very, very complicated situation, and this is where it shows that this war is expanding. The arc of this war now has three very powerful, the E3 of Europe are now joining in support role here.
Can I just highlight maybe that this isn't, and we were discussing this earlier, that this isn't the first time we've seen US in this kind of a situation where they seem to have miscalculated what will be the end game or the end result. And I'll highlight each of the circumstances. The most recent, perhaps, is that of Venezuela, where we saw Maduro, of course, being picked up, lifted out, arrested. What were they hoping for ultimately, Sandeep? It was regime change.
Yes.
Has that happened?
Well, it has in a certain sense, but Venezuela remains under the US control. But, if there are two other incidents in the 21st century you can look at, there was gross miscalculation on the part of the United States. One is, of course, Afghanistan.
Yeah. And the other we put that out. Our next one was Afghanistan. Yeah.
Yes. The other is Iraq. You went in there, on the premise that Saddam Hussein was developing weapons of mass destruction in 2003. You sent in this huge force over there. Saddam didn't have WMDs. You ended up breaking up that country, creating problems for the whole world.
Yeah.
It's not just WMDs. It was the actual WMD there was ISIS. ISIS was the byproduct of the breakup, literally, of Iraq. And these are the kind of problems the US has invested blood, treasure, the lives of its soldiers. Close to 5,000 soldiers died. They've spent $4 or $5 trillion in fighting these two wars. Based on very dubious intelligence. Right?
Their biggest miscalculation, if I may, is investment in a state sponsor of radical Islamist terror, Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan has bled Americans for decades. Pakistanis have been involved in terror attacks in the United States of America, in Europe, in Afghanistan. They were a part of, the cooperation for operations in Afghanistan, and they were responsible for killing people.
But no lessons.
Yet America invests in Pakistan.
No lessons, Gaurav. You look at what happened in Afghanistan or in Iraq. Yes, boots on the ground, not really there in this particular case. But you look at a case like that of Afghanistan. What's happened right now? The Taliban is in power. It was a messy withdrawal. It was a messy time for the last many, many years in Afghanistan. So you'd think that US, their intelligence would have learned a few lessons. Hasn't happened really.
Well, clearly the lessons of Vietnam have been forgotten, Akshita. And if you look at it, they replaced the Taliban 1.0 in 2001 with the Taliban 2.0 in 2021. And it was a humiliating withdrawal for the United States because, clearly they went into this operation both in Iraq and in Afghanistan without any clear objective. What was the end game going to be like? They didn't war game the end game. And that clearly seems to have happened here in the case of Iran as well. They didn't know what the end game was. They went in thinking that, regime change, decapitation, the Iranian people will rise up in revolt. It will be another 1979 moment like the Shah of Iran fled Iran. Ayatollah Khamenei and his entire leadership council would escape, would run to China and Russia. None of that seems to have happened. So this is a very, shocking miscalculation on the part of the United States. They have all of this massive military machine.
So was it pressure? Do you think it was pressure from maybe in Israel to kind of, or maybe misguided information or intel that, you should go for this? This is the right time to do it because this is a very weak regime.
Well, clearly they anticipated a very weak regime that had been extremely weakened by the 12-day war that began last year. They were under a lot of pressure. Their nuclear sites had been hit. And it's quite likely that Trump and Israel believed that this was the moment to strike. And if they struck, the regime of Iran was so weak that it would collapse.
You know, so from the Israeli perspective, I can understand Israel wanting to go in and destroy Iran. Because Iran and Israel, literally, the regime and Israel are sworn enemies. Whatever happened after 7th of October 2023, you can't massacre in a small country 1,200 people and abduct another 250 and then continue to use your proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, to continuously bleed them. So what Benjamin Netanyahu did, you can understand. What Donald Trump did is something, he has intelligence inputs that are coming in from multiple directions, including his own CIA. Unless everyone believes that they are still in the game and they can still ensure that this pounding, look, we're only talking early days yet.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
So we still don't know. We don't know what
within
changes.
Within a week, things could change. Within 10 days, maybe there's a scenario that the people feel emboldened enough to come out. So this is just one part of the pressure that's being applied. Military pressure. Now, when you have more economic pressure that's being applied, when you have more cyber pressure that's being applied in many, many, many which ways. So we still have to see, wait and watch how this develops. As of now, it does appear to be counterproductive. Maybe in times to come, initial pain. Look, what was he warned of? He was warned it's a high risk but high result operation. High risk taken, results, we're still waiting.
Yeah, and we'll see whether things change. But as of now, it definitely seems like maybe Iran was underestimated, that they didn't expect this kind of action by Iran, or for that matter, that this conflict would go on in the manner that it has and could also extend in the manner that it has. One of the big aspects of what we've seen as a result of this war and conflict is that almost the entire world has been hit because of flight operations going for a toss. The entire Middle East air operations have been completely stopped. Flights, obviously airports are shut down. So amid that, even in India, many flights have been cancelled. Here's a ground report by Sneha Mordani from Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport on what flyers who were expecting to fly out today in the last 24 hours are facing.
Of passengers here with me, they were holidaying in Delhi. They also traveled to Benares, and now when they wanted to go back, they're from Spain. They were headed to Barcelona via Abu Dhabi, but they do know that the flight space has now been closed down. You can't really go to Abu Dhabi at this point in time. Etihad is the airlines that they were taking, and now they're stranded in Delhi. They just don't know what to do. What are your plans? What are you thinking now?
Our thinking is we are a little bit nervous because we don't know how to do these days.
Okay.
Now we have a flight on Friday, but we don't know if the flight will be anything.
Yes.
So we don't know nothing, and where we will come back home.
Okay, so now you have to continue to stay in Delhi at your own expense, I'm presuming?
Yes. We are here to get more information about the flights that will be cancelled and where will be again in a regular work. I don't know.
Okay, you have to go back to work, is what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Right. So obviously, so many disruptions, so people, they have to get back to work. They were having a short trip here in Delhi and other parts of North India is what they tell me, but now they're stuck. They have to head back to Barcelona via Abu Dhabi. Clearly that is not happening. Lack of clarity plus expenses that these girls have to bear. They say that they would want some information and obviously would want some help from the airline as well. With video journalist Pradeep Gupta, Sneha Mordani in Delhi for India Today Television. Well, barring a few passengers, you don't really see mayhem at the Delhi airport and particularly at the T3 terminal, which is the international airport, because airlines have obviously informed passengers about the cancellations. And look at the cancellations that we are seeing in the Middle East sector. The Gulf region particularly is what has been worst hit. Dubai, Daman, as you can see, also Kuwait. We're seeing cancellations in many of these routes. You can see Doha flight that has been cancelled again. The Doha flight, the Dubai flight, Emirates has been cancelled. You're seeing other cancellations also for Indigo Airlines in Dubai, as is evident right here. You see Riyadh, which is an Indigo flight that has been cancelled, and also the Sharjah flight here, which has been cancelled. So this is the route which is particularly affected. The Sharjah Sharjah, the Riyadh, and apart from that, the Middle Eastern areas, the cities and the countries where flying is restricted at this point in time. These are the cancellations, but because, like I just said, we've seen so many people being informed about these cancellations, they've not ended up coming to the airport. But we do see some passengers who are hoping against hope that they'll hop onto perhaps some other flight and maybe, get onto their destination via some other route. That also is the reality at this point in time. What the passengers here are clearly telling us is that there is uncertainty and there is lack of information, which is really keeping them, or rather left them in lurch, and that is the problematic aspect of their journey at this point in time. So this group here also, like I said earlier, are in fact waiting to fly out, but the route they were taking is not where the flights are not in fact taking the route which they were taking, and that's the reason why many such groups are stranded, some of them here at the airport, but many of the passengers have actually decided not to come here at this point in time, knowing that the uncertainty would continue. With video journalist Pradeep Gupta, Sneha Mordani in Delhi for India Today Television.